He built worlds of dinosaurs, aliens, and epic wars. Yet when Spielberg talks about the films that shaped him, his voice drops to that of a wide-eyed kid. "I saw it once, and it just pulverized me," he recalls. "I went straight out and bought the Maurice Jarre soundtrack." For Spielberg, cinema was never just a career, it was a calling. And like every great storyteller, his own story begins with someone else's. The frames that raised him, the voices that taught him how to listen, and above all, the movies that made him believe. From ghost stories to operas of war, from small-town dreams to cosmic odysseys, Spielberg's favorites reveal more about him than any interview ever could. You can fake a resume, but can you fake influence? These aren't trendy picks. They're blueprints, films that pulse through his work, sometimes as whispers, sometimes as thunder. See his list, and suddenly his career makes perfect sense. "Some of the most spectacular action I've ever seen in my life, in any movie I've ever seen," he says, still in awe. Some directors talk about legacy. Spielberg lives inside it. Now he's sharing the 6 films that shaped him most. Stay with us until the end, and you'll discover the one movie he calls perfect, the film that first made him pick up a camera. Lawrence of Arabia. Lawrence of Arabia, 1962. Some films don't just inspire directors, they consume them. For Steven Spielberg, Lawrence of Arabia wasn't a movie, it was an awakening. He first saw it at 16, and he walked out of the theater a different person. That was the moment he realized what cinema could be. The endless sweep of desert skies, the razor-sharp dissolves, the sheer audacity of David Lean's canvas, it seared itself into Spielberg's imagination forever. "It changed my brain," he once admitted. It reshaped how he framed a scene, how he let silence breathe, how he paced a story. Watch Saving Private Ryan, Munich, or War Horse, and you can feel Lean's fingerprints in every wide shot, every still moment that speaks louder than dialogue. The silent opening titles? Straight out of Lawrence. The deep focus cinematography, the staggering scale, Lean again. But it wasn't just the visuals. What haunted Spielberg was the paradox. A so-called hero who wasn't heroic, a war epic about a man unraveling from the inside. Lean didn't just show what a man did, he revealed who he was becoming. That lesson stuck. Spielberg has often called Lawrence of Arabia his desert island movie. In fact, when Columbia Pictures restored the film in the late 80s, he personally helped oversee it. That's how deep the obsession runs. And the most remarkable part? Every time he revisits it, Spielberg says the same thing, it still teaches him something new. A Space Odyssey. A Space Odyssey, 1968. Steven Spielberg never claimed he fully understood 2001, A Space Odyssey. That was exactly why he worshipped it. Kubrick didn't explain, he provoked. He didn't guide, he dared. Spielberg once admitted, "It blew my mind, and it still does every time." In Spielberg's warm universe of heart and story, 2001 was something else entirely, a cold, distant star. Beautiful, precise, unknowable. And he couldn't stop staring at it. The long silences, the ballet of machines, the haunting truth that space isn't thrilling, it's terrifyingly empty. This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it. "I don't know what you're talking about, Hal." Those lines became etched in his memory. Spielberg confessed he rewatched the film just to feel small. Not in awe of the cosmos, but in awe of what cinema itself could achieve. Kubrick taught him that a film doesn't need to explain. It only needs to be true to itself. Their styles were opposites. Kubrick cold, Spielberg warm, but in spirit, they were secret collaborators. Before his death, Kubrick even asked Spielberg for advice on AI and then handed the project to him. Spielberg said yes, because you don't say no to your oracle. And though Spielberg never imitated Kubrick, you can feel 2001 orbiting his work. In the awe of the alien in Close Encounters. In the sleek futurism of Minority Report. In the somber poetry of AI. Some directors you borrow from. Others you chase. Kubrick was the one Spielberg could only chase. A Guy Named Joe. A Guy Named Joe. 1943. Before Spielberg gave us aliens, dinosaurs, or soldiers storming Omaha Beach, there was a quiet little film called A Guy Named Joe. It wasn't grand. It wasn't epic. But for a young Spielberg, it was the first movie that made him feel everything. "I saw it on TV as a kid," he once said. "It hit me like a thunderbolt. I cried my eyes out." The story was simple yet haunting. A reckless pilot dies in war, then returns as a spirit to guide a younger man. It was romantic. It was strange. And it was exactly the kind of story Spielberg would spend his entire career chasing. Just sit back and let the ship fly herself. Remember, this airplane knows more about flying than you'll ever know. Relax. As a child, Spielberg couldn't explain why it moved him, but a guy named Joe gave him the feeling. Grief and hope. Sacrifice and redemption. All wrapped in supernatural wonder. He never forgot it. Decades later, he remade it as Always in 1989. It wasn't just a passion project, it was a love letter, a thank you note written across time. "I didn't want to outdo it," Spielberg said. "I just wanted to relive it." The critics weren't kind, but Spielberg didn't care. That movie wasn't for them. It was for the kid who stayed up late, glued to the TV, watching Spencer Tracy say goodbye. Because some films don't just teach you how to direct. They teach you why. And Spielberg never stopped learning from it. Fantasia. Fantasia, 1940. Long before Spielberg mastered plot, character, or dialogue, he discovered something even deeper: sound. Fantasia didn't just entertain him, it consumed him. "It was like the screen opened and swallowed me whole," he once recalled. To young Spielberg, Fantasia wasn't a movie, it was a fever dream, a hallucination brought to life. Disney's daring experiment of fusing classical music with hand-drawn animation broke every rule. It was pure emotion set free. For Spielberg, it was the first time film felt like magic. He later said it changed how he heard movies, that rhythm could carry a story, that images could dance without words. Look at Close Encounters of the Third Kind and you don't just see aliens, you hear Fantasia. The five-note melody, the trembling orchestration, it's Disney filtered through Spielberg's imagination. Even the soaring E.T. bike flight echoes that same sweep. Weightless, musical, transcendent. Fantasia taught me that story isn't always what characters say, it's what the music feels, Spielberg reflected decades later. He still speaks of it with awe, not analysis. He doesn't dissect it, he remembers being carried away by it. And if you asked him the secret to making a movie that speaks to children and adults at once, he wouldn't hand you a script. He'd point to Fantasia. Because sometimes the wildest ideas, the ones no one understands at first, are the ones that stay with us forever. The Godfather. The Godfather, 1972. That was the moment Berg quit. When he saw it, he thought to himself, "I'll never be that good. They've set a bar I can't touch." He later admitted, "No one has ever used shadows and silence the way Coppola did in that film." And he wasn't exaggerating. The quiet dread, the moral rot, the slow unraveling of power, it all seeped into cinema after The Godfather. Even Schindler's List carries its DNA, its solemn tone born from that same world of shadows. Munich 2, cold, precise, meticulous, echoes the lessons of Coppola. That film taught him to slow down, to stop showing off, to tell the truth, frame by frame. Because sometimes the greatest praise a director can give isn't words. It's envy. It's a Wonderful Life. It's a Wonderful Life. 1946. Not a blockbuster. Not a technical miracle. Just a man, a town, and a moment. But for Spielberg, it was everything. "That's the film that made me believe in stories," he once said. Not Hollywood. Not cinema. Stories. The first time he watched it, he wasn't analyzing shots or camera angles. He was holding his breath. George Bailey's collapse didn't feel like a plot twist. It felt personal. Spielberg admitted he cried harder at that moment than at any other scene he'd ever witnessed. "Clarence, help me, Clarence." What Frank Capra achieved was deceptively simple. No gangsters, no aliens, no car chases. Just life falling apart and, somehow, coming back together. That quiet courage, that ability to find the epic in the ordinary, became Spielberg's obsession. You see it in E.T., where a suburban backyard becomes a window to the galaxy. In Catch Me If You Can, where a father's absence echoes louder than any siren. Even in The Fabelmans, which plays like Spielberg whispering, "This is my George Bailey." Capra proved that hope isn't naive, it's brave. Critics often accuse Spielberg of being sentimental. But that sentiment traces straight back to Bedford Falls. Because Capra didn't just make a movie. He left behind a philosophy. A belief that small lives matter. That quiet sacrifices echo. That storytelling isn't only about escape, it's about coming home. And that, more than spectacle or box office records, is what Spielberg has been chasing his entire career. And there it is, the truth behind the lens. 6 films that didn't just shape Spielberg's career, but his soul. Not the obvious choices. Not the easy ones. The ones that lingered, in tone, in theme, in how they made him feel. Because for all his record-breaking blockbusters, Spielberg never chased size. He chased feeling. Wonder. Dread. Redemption. That quiet kind of power you don't even notice until the credits roll. Now you've seen what inspired him. The question is, what inspires you? Drop a comment and tell us which film on this list struck you the hardest. And if you want more deep dives into the minds of directors, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because trust us, we're just getting started.